Hello, everyone. Welcome to our second Spinning Yarn Speaker Series of the year. My name is Matthew Rowe, and I am the CEO of the Campaign for Wool in Canada and its parent organization, the Canadian Wool Council. We're really excited to have you all here today to hear from my colleague on the other side of the world about the New Zealand wool industry and the work of the Campaign for Wool in New Zealand. Philippa Wright is no stranger to the wool industry. She's been involved for 46 years. I think she was brought into the industry shortly after birth, and has been working in it ever since. And in a variety of roles. She's got a number of companies in the industry, and is very familiar with the value chain as a business owner, but as well in her previous role as chair of the campaign in New Zealand. So we are really excited to hear about your work in wool, about the work of the campaign in New Zealand, and I'm sure, as always, the group will have a lot of interesting questions to see the differences between our two industries, what we can learn from each other, and obviously how we can work together. So over to you, Philippa.
Thank you, Matthew, and thank you everybody for joining today and giving me the opportunity to speak to you. I recently spent a week in Montreal at the IWTO conference, and I was absolutely fascinated to learn about what Canada is trying to do with wool. And it just reminded me how every country has their own individual issues and they have to deal with it in their own way. I had spent a lot of time talking to Jane and Matthew over some years, and almost sometimes getting frustrated, saying, no, you shouldn't do it like this, you should do that. But then being there and listening and seeing and understanding, I realized that what you do and your issues are just so utterly different from ours. And yet there are a lot of similarities, and that's where it's been fantastic with the campaign, that we've been able to work with each other and learn from each other. So today I'm going to speak about me, about how I got into the industry, and what I've done, and my business and what my business does, and then just finish off briefly with where the campaign is going. We're very fortunate that one of our listeners is actually the chairman now, Ryan Cosgrove, so he will be able to come in and add to it at the end. But I'm at the end of my career, as one would say, and so I feel really privileged that I've got to this point, and that now I'm seeing young people like Ryan and yourselves, taking over the baton and going forth really well and strongly. So have you got the slides up? And if you could just move to the next. Okay, so I'm going to give, as I said, a brief introduction to myself first, and then go on to where I work and what I do, and then I'll go on to a little bit about the New Zealand farming and where they're at, and then onto into perhaps the future and our hopes. So the next slide, please. Okay, about me. As Matthew said, I was kind of born into the wool industry. My father was a wool classer and a wool buyer. He classed in the South Island, in the middle of the South Island, classing merino clips. My mother was a teacher. I'm one of 6 children. We were just brought up knowing that wool was essential. The South Island is a lot colder than the North Island where I live now, so it was just automatically a part of our lives. We knew that we had the blanket at the end of our bed, so that if there was ever an emergency or a fire or anything like that, we grabbed that first to wrap us around to prevent burning or to keep us warm or whatever. We knew that all the old blankets always went on the bottom of the mattress and then the sheets, because that made us sleep better. Well, we didn't actually talk about it. We just knew these things. We all wore wool. We never, we were, as babies, we were wrapped in it. Um, it's just always been a part of my life. And when I grew up in the small town of Waimate in the middle of the South Island again, I didn't actually know really about what my dad did, and I wasn't really interested, to be honest. I went to boarding school. I was lucky enough to have a student exchange where I spent a year in Montana, not far from you people, Glasgow, Montana, in a little town. And when I came back from there, I was going to go and I had applied and was accepted to become a teacher. But I had this, I think because I'd done that exchange, I had a little bit of angst in me and I wanted to get going and see the world. I didn't want to sit around and go to university and be a teacher. I knew I wanted to do something. So my dad was a bit distraught. So he said, "Rightio, you're coming out with me and you're going into the shearing sheds and you're going to be what we called then rousies. I think they're called shed hands now." And for 6 months, I worked as hard as I've ever worked in my whole life. It was just hard, hard work. But I was watching my dad, who was standing at the end of this, picking up the fleeces and being thrown on the table, and my dad would grade them and put them into bins. And I thought, gosh, he's not doing much and he's earning quite good money. So I thought, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to go and get a wool diploma and I'm going to come back and class wool, earn lots of money and go back overseas. So that is how I started in the wool industry. So it wasn't, illustriously, meant. I just fell into it. What I didn't realize when I first started was that there really weren't any women in the wool industry at that time. There were, but they were all in the sheds doing the shed work. And if they were in exporting offices, they were the ones doing the secretarial work. So when I started, fortunately, I was able to get my qualifications and tickets classing merino because of the influence of my father and the friends that he had, and they allowed me to class their clip. So I became qualified enough so then I thought I'd better apply for a job, a proper job that I could go to work from 8 to 5 type thing. So I applied for jobs all over the country, didn't get any applications until someone said to me, perhaps if you just put P Wright rather than Philippa Wright. And straight away I got interviews. But when I turned up for the interview, then I got offered jobs in the office or whatever. And it wasn't until I made an application in Hawke's Bay, where I live now, in a wool brokering office, that a chap that had just been a manager who was a little bit out there, he wasn't really a wool man, he'd got promoted quite unexpectedly, but he thought differently. And when he interviewed me and read my application, he said, "I think I've got the job for you." And it was a new job. It was when when we were starting to test wool, because previous to this there was no testing. So he decided that I was going to create the system to put walls together, going on the test results that we were starting to learn about. So I was thrown into this role and I did find it exciting and I found it really good. I had 15 years of working in that brokering system. And although I learned an enormous amount, it was probably the worst time in my life, because obviously being this female and amongst all these men, it just wasn't pleasant. But I've forgotten all that. And what it did teach me was resilience. And because I was always shoved to the worst job, when I ended up buying my own business, I didn't realize just how much I had learned right from the bottom right up. And so for me, when I did get the opportunity to buy my own business and actually run a brokering store, it was so easy. I just found it so easy and I loved it. And I loved running a business. I loved being able to employ people and treat them the way I wanted to treat them. And I loved the excitement of just being in a community and working for the community, with the community, and them participating in my business. So right up until then, I have to say, I still wasn't overly enamored with wool. I was just doing my job, keeping, running a business, thinking I was really exciting because I had my own business and all the rest of it. And then along came the campaign for wool. And I had vowed when I'd gone into my business that I was never going to get involved with committees or be anything like corporate or anything, because I just wanted to leave that behind me, because I hadn't really had such an enjoyable time. But there was a couple of people that said, I want you to come to this meeting. It's called the Campaign for Wool, and we're just starting, and we want you to be a part of it. And I had no idea what it was, where it was going, and why on earth they wanted me there. I went there, we had a couple of meetings, and honestly, I just thought, this is so out of my league. I just don't know where I'm at. But something in my the back of my mind sort of thought, actually, this is what I've thought about all my career, thinking somebody needs to do this sort of thing. They were talking about education, awareness, creating demand, and just all the things that we'd lost through not having a wool board and people promoting New Zealand wool. So I persevered, and it probably took me 2 years to really understand and feel confident in in the fact that that's what I was going to persevere with. I I became a member, ended up being a chair at one stage. I also was very involved with, that also got me involved with IWTO, which is the International World Textile Organization. And from that, I would travel the world and meet the world community. And that again opened my mind to understanding that it wasn't just about us in Central Hawke's Bay, little farmers, little wool brokers, sending our wool off to the rest of the world. I just thought New Zealand was the bee's knees as far as wool was concerned. I thought it was the only country that talked about wool the way we did. But I went out to the world and realized that there was another whole universe to it. So I became very involved with IWTO, became involved in the working groups, got to know the people, learnt, just learnt so much just from talking other people. And that again gave me more confidence coming back each time to my business. And I projected that to my growers, who I think are still loyal to me because they feel that they get a lot of information, not just about what's happening in my area, but in the world, and they get to understand why we're in the position that we're in. Now, and then I was fortunate enough to, at the end of all that, to receive the Order of Merit from our Governor General on behalf of the Queen. And that was something that I genuinely was so surprised and so honored, and I never aspired to it because I didn't think it happened in the wool industry. But when I received it, it made me understand where I'd come from, working in the sheds as a shed hand with overalls and getting absolutely filthy, to ending up at one part sitting at the same table as the then Prince Charles, having a meal with him and all the world wool leaders around that table and having a conversation. And I thought, I must be one of the luckiest people in the world to have such an extreme and such a wide variation in a career. And apart from that, my other great love of this career has been being out on farms and seeing country that you would never normally drive to, and seeing vistas that are just extraordinary. And for those of you that have been to New Zealand will understand, even though it's a small country, there's a lot of places that you just never go to unless you had a reason. And so receiving that made me look back over all that and made me feel honestly really grateful. But also it inspired me to think, actually, I can pull back now. I can pull back. And what I really want to do now and see is bring in the younger people, inspire them, and try and give them the same sort of excitement about a career that a lot of people are looking at as a sunset industry in New Zealand. So if you go to the next slide, I spent far too much time on that. So I actually just run a wool brokering business. So we handle between 10 and 15,000 bales of wool a year, which is very small in comparison to the bigger operators who do 100,000 plus. But I am a small operator, but big for a small operator, if that makes sense. So we have a lot of really small ones and we have the big ones, and so I'm right in the middle. What we do is we collect wool from the farms. We have trucks that go out. You can see a picture of the truck going out into a wool shed. We pick up their wool after it's been shorn, sorted, and baled up, and they bring it into our store, and we then put it into their lines, process it through testing, and then catalogue it for sale, which is taken to an auction. Now, we have two types of auction in New Zealand. We have an online auction, and we have an open cry. Most people, or the bigger companies, go to open cry, but because I'm smaller, I want to be able to be more nimble, and I have gone to online. And I also believe that that is the way of the future for brokering, because again, you know, if we want to bring the young ones in, we've got to be using technology. And so I've been trying very hard to change my business and make it as technology friendly as possible, so that when the young ones come in, they understand it, they're excited by it, and they can do it. I went to a wool sale the other day. Oh no, it was the finish of a wool sale and an open cry. And I was coming out, and there were two wool buyers sitting at their desks waiting to go out to catch the plane back home. And they had a pencil and they had a calculator that they were tapping on, and they had the paper. And they were my age. And I was just looking at them and thinking, for goodness sakes, that is so backward. And if we want to bring in these new ones to get them really interested, that we need to progress. So I feel that's something in our country that we're just being a bit slow on. And in my business, I've tried to do that wherever I possibly can. And in the groups that I'm in the brokers associations and the National Council, and that I have tried to push for that as much as I can. So to get a feel of so I'm doing 10 to 15,000 K, which, as I said, is of bales per year, which as I said, is quite small. New Zealand produces in any given year between 800 and 1 million bales in a year. The farming land is, we have 13.7 hectares of farming land, and we produce 136,000 tonne of wool, 350,000 tonne of meat per year. At the moment, we'd say we have 25 million sheep, but that is depleting. We may stay up in the sheep numbers somewhat, but that's more because the breeds of the sheep are changing to sheep that don't grow wool. So we're very concerned about that, and that's, again, later when I talk about the campaign, is why we're so frantically trying to reintroduce wool to our country, and ensure that we don't lose what we have. So you can, that shed, by the way, that you can see there where the fleece is being thrown. I was up there yesterday. It's a station in the middle of the North Island, and it's probably the largest privately owned strong wool sheep and beef farm. They shear 50,000 sheep in 10 days, so they're shearing about 8,000 sheep a day. and they produce 1,000 bales of wool, which comes into our shed in a time frame of 10 days. So it's pretty full on, and they only shear, because they're so big, they only shear once a year. So it's full wool and or long, strong wool, which is used for carpets. But it's a magnificent thing to watch, really. But anyway, you can switch through to the next. Oh yeah. Oh well, I've probably talked about this. So what I did was, when I was saying that I was a broker and I was trying to progress, early on in my career, I joined up with two other companies of similar size, and we created what we called Country Auctions Limited, and that was to allow us to get into the main auction group, because you had to be a member of the Brokers Association, and the big guys didn't really want us there, so we went off to the lawyers and wrote letters, and they allowed us in there. And so we initially did participate in the open cry. That's my partner there, the auctioneer, Dean Freeman, who did a wonderful job for over 12 years selling our wool. And these are just pictures of the inside of my wool store when it's beautifully tidy and almost empty, which is lovely. So you can move on, I think. Just talking about that auction, probably Ryan might correct me later on, but I think open cry is still about 60% of the wool and online is 40%, but I do think that will change. So another part of my business is I'm going to assume you know what DAGs are, because some countries don't, but it's the DAG is the sheep poo from the back end of the sheep. So we collect DAGs, and we have a system called dagging, where they actually shear the dags off, and there's obviously a little bit of wool attached to it. So we bring those into our dag plant, and we have a pretty big machine that, first of all, goes into a conveyor belt and sorts it out. And we have a big heater at the end, and it dries the wool and hardens the dags. And it goes through a big, huge crusher, I don't even know what you call it, but a big crusher, and it separates the wool from the manure, and the manure drops down and the wool pops up and fluffs out. So the manure then goes over to a system where we create garden manure, and we sell that to one of the biggest garden companies, who are desperate for manure, because since COVID, people have really taken on to home gardening. And so for the first time ever in my career, the dag manure is actually earning more than the wool, which is really sad, but fortunate, it's keeping my dag crusher going. So we produce probably I don't, like, so if you have 50 bales of dags, you get 25 bales of wool, and then the rest of it's so it's pretty much 50-50. And that is an operation that we run, and has it isn't that profitable at the moment because of the wool, but and it's dirty work. It's hard, dirty work. But it has been a great asset to the wider community, because before I came along, there was only one, and they weren't getting paid anything for it. So it just created a bit of competition. But now, as it works out, there's only two of us left, and we're sort of just muddling along and hoping that the wool will pick up. The wool comes out a kind of green color, obviously, but the wool is fine. The wool is good. It's still of a quality that can be used, and it's used in blankets, in outer jacket wear, or blending, or it used to be sent. A lot of it used to be sent to Japan and used for mattress fillers. The what are those flat things that they call? Oh, I can't think of the name, but they used to use them. But Now that the wool worldwide has got cheaper, they can use oddments, and so they don't need to use dag manure. Futons, that's it. Thank you. Yeah, futons was a really big thing for dag wool about 10 years ago, and practically all my wool went direct there. So again, it's just with the drop in wool prices, the uses have sort of changed. So if you turn over, and the other exciting part of my operation is the wool pillows that I produce. Now, I did originally have a business in America where we sent our raw wool over, washed wool over to a place in Georgia, and we had a knopping machine which created those little balls that you can see in the pictures there and made them into pillows, and they were also used for insulation in houses. Unfortunately, due to probably being in business with perhaps the wrong people, great learning curve for me, but also COVID hit really badly in the area that they were in, and we are now looking at selling the machine. But that gave me the inspiration to come back to New Zealand and say, well, why can't I do it here? So I have a relationship with a company, Peter Crone, who is in Christchurch, and he creates what we call the Joma wool pearls. What he does with them is he puts them through a system where they're crimped. And the best way to describe it is when women used to get their hair curled, it was permanent. And that's what he does with the wool. And then it's super washed, which means that it's washed about 7 times, and then it can be washed in machines and all the rest of it. But I don't know if you have the same effect in your country, but wool in New Zealand isn't noted for its high bulk. So you can sit on wool and it'll stay flat. But this system means that there's always a bulk to it. There's always a bounce, so that when you fill the pillows, they're always going to be nice and bulky, and you can wash them in the washing machine. You can do whatever you want and put them in the sunshine, and they'll just rebounce. So I've been doing that. I did that mainly to create some hope for my staff and for my farmer clients, because the wool prices have got so low that it's really depressing, and they're just starting to just think only meat and forget about wool. And my clients just absolutely love it, and my staff, that was really interesting. I didn't think I'd get the same effect as I have from my staff, that they were inspired by the fact that they could see the raw material coming in and then us producing this gorgeous, beautiful product, and people really wanting it and prepared to pay good money for it. So it's been quite enlightening for me. I did it just as a little side thing, and I mean, I couldn't live on the proceeds I'm making from it, but it's certainly paying its own way, and I've had such good feedback, and I've had people come in and start thinking about what they can do with wool as well, and doing so. It's great for me to do this. It's been great for my business. It's been great for our morale, and it's been great for the morale of the farmers. But in all honesty, it's not going to change anything to do with the wool prices in New Zealand, because it's too small. So anything that we do in New Zealand really needs to be exported. As we're told frequently here, 80% of the consumers are in the Northern Hemisphere. So when we've got a country of 5 million, probably only 2 million of them are actually shopping. It's just not big enough to create a market that's going to change or create that kind of demand that we need to lift the prices. But as I said, it's been done for other reasons, and I think those reasons have been magnificent. It's really been exciting for us as a small group. So if you move on to the next, yeah. So this is a farm up the road from me, one of my clients, Marae Tara. They farm strong wool sheep. We are very fortunate in New Zealand that we farm outside all year round. We do get snow, we do get rain, we do get floods, we get all the difficulties of climate, but it's still a temperate climate. So our animals graze outside year round. They eat grass. They live in they must be the luckiest sheep in the world. I mean, we aren't the biggest producers of wool by a long shot. We're very small in actual fact, but we are the third largest exporter of wool, and our strong wool is renowned for being whiter, brighter, and stronger than anyone else. And that's been from how we farm, but a lot of genetics as well. And our main sheep breed is Romney. And the variations from that. We do have the very fine wool that makes all those gorgeous jerseys and blanket, clothing, outerwear, and similar to Australia. But that's only 4% of our wool clip, and that's the majority of them are in the deep south of the South Island. Again, New Zealand produces the whitest merino and the finest, but it's such a small amount. And but they have created a niche market with the likes of Mons Royale and Icebreaker and those types of clothing companies, and that's been a great example to us as strong wool growers to try and create that niche and to create that kind of demand. However, as you well know, there's just an enormous difference between a fine 16 micron and a strong 38 to 40 micron that produces carpet. We still wash 80% of our wool is washed in New Zealand and then scoured, then exported as a scoured parcel or a washed parcel. I'm not sure what words you're familiar with, but you can ask me later when I use certain terminology. But and the scouring is huge for us because it means that we can create parcels of wool specific to our buyers at the other end, meaning that we can do the blending and put wool types together, have them washed, and they come out as one type. So we're very keen to keep that ability here in New Zealand. And recently, or a year ago, we had a dreadful cyclone and flood in the North Island, and it affected my town particularly and my farming area. And that dag shed that I showed you was flooded up to my waist, and we had to take 2 truck and trailer loads of wool, dags, manure to the dump once the water went away. But the farms and the town was really badly affected. But our wool scour, we've got 2 wool scours in the country, one in the North Island, one in the South Island. The one in the North Island is just up the road from me, and it was flooded just about to the rooftops. So it's been a year. They've only just started scouring to get it, after getting it rebuilt and resorted and new machines from China and Europe. But it made us so aware of the reliance that we have on that ability to scour. So for the past year, our logistics has been horrendous. We've filled just about every empty shed in Hawke's Bay with wool because we're waiting for it to get washed before it can go on the boat to go overseas. So but it also reminded us just the relevance of the ability to wash wool, because unfortunately probably 40% more ended up going greasy direct to either India or China and was scoured there. Now, their scouring is good, but it's not as good as ours. So that worries us about the quality perception of our wool, going forward. So we like to have the control of that. So if you switch over, which I've probably already talked about, the Romney, the breeds. We have, yeah, that's a typical. I'm interested. There's one there, sheep that's got no wool in the neck. I've never seen a sheep like that here, but I'm just guessing that it's not that well, that it's ended up with no wool there. But normally they're full wool, they're covered completely from their neck down. And they do breed types of sheep to have the no wool on the legs, specifically to minimize the oddments that come from the shearing process. So you could perhaps move on. We are at the moment trying to bring in New Zealand farm certification. We realise that we are going to, for the ability to sell wool, we're going to have to be a part of RWS and those types. We have started that. Now, this might sound crazy, but unfortunately, it's really easy for New Zealand farmers to get these certifications. So when RWS was first brought in, they got, $5 more a kilo for their wool. They were using merino wool. So they got a real advantage. But once we brought in NZFAP, because we do everything correctly, we look after our animals, we look after our land, we look after our people, we look and we do a lot of things correctly, it means that pretty much everybody's going to be NZFAP. So it takes away that initial bonus of getting perhaps more demand for that type of wool. So we're now discussing quite strongly, how do we get the story out there that yes, we are all NZFAP, but it's because we've got high quality, high standards. So yeah, that's a work in progress. And I do think the world is demanding it, and we've got no choice, so we have to go along with it. So if you move through, and I think I've just mentioned a bit that like the wool prices are really down, and people are starting to bring these sheep in that don't produce wool, which is really frightening to us. The previous government wasn't really friendly to farming. They were making it very easy for overseas buyers to come in and buy land and plant trees, and we've lost an enormous amount of really good farming land to trees. Before that, it was dairy. Dairy was introduced to New Zealand probably 20 years ago, but and they took a lot of sheep farming land, and now we're kind of fighting for space. And unless the wool prices improve, the last couple of years have been fantastic for meat, and that's what's kept sheep on our land. But just right now, the meat market has dropped. That goes up and down like everything, but it's because wool is so low as well. People are starting to get really nervous, and the younger generation are coming in. People say they're lazy because they don't want to do the work that sheep require, and they're putting cattle on because it's easy. But in actual fact, I think they're just working out the numbers, and they're working out that it's much, much more profitable to just run cattle where they can and trees. And the sheep are a lot more work, but they're not getting paid enough to keep inspired to keep breeding. So if you turn over, if you turn over again, because I've pretty much talked about that. So where the campaign comes in is mainly in New Zealand. We're quite different. We're different than the Canadian campaign. What I discovered with you, or well, seeing what you do, is probably one of your biggest issues is logistics of the country. It's such a huge country, and you've got sheep scattered all over the place, and you've got no real central place, whereas New Zealand's really, really small. So our processing operations are simple, like we pick it up from the farm, and it's never probably more than 2 hours drive to a store where it's going to get processed or whatever, and then it's a less than an hour's drive to the wool scour. So what our campaign for wool has really concentrated on is education and awareness. We collect a voluntary levy from wool growers, and we collect it from probably about 60% of them. But it's not a lot of money. And so we've had to be very, very careful and about what we do. And so our main thing was woolen schools for children between 11 and 12. And we have a container which goes around the schools. We have two containers, one in the North Island, one in the South Island. And they go to the schools and they introduce wool, not wool about sheep farming, but wool about what wool can do for you as young people, what it can produce. And we're trying to inspire the artists, the architects, the people that are actually going to think about wool and where it can go in the future, and to re-understand the relevance of wool to us as a country, and to the world, because we all know it's so good for the environment. And so these young ones want to fix up what we've apparently botched up. So wool is their number one friend, really, I think. So we have the woolen schools, and now we've got a new no, I don't know what you call it, a group called Wool Impact, which the government set up, and it's got meat, it's funded by meat company, some industry and government, and they are going to help us, and we're doing a really good architects program. We're trying to find all the people that are creating wool products and helping them expand to the point that they can export. And we are trying to also set up a scientific base so that we can go to our brand partners and say, yes, wool is fire retardant, and this is the proof, and this is what you can say. Yes, wool is soundproof, and this is how we can prove it, and you can put that on your tickets. When I first came into the industry 1,000,000 years ago, we had the wool board, and it was going around the world doing all that kind of stuff. But when synthetics came in, the wool industry, particularly New Zealand, Australia, and the UK, were actually so arrogant that their comment was, and it's written, that we don't have to worry about synthetics coming in because we know wool is so much better, so we don't have to do anything. So synthetics very cleverly spent billions, and are still spending billions, talking about how good their product is, and using chemicals to create all the attributes that wool already has. And wool sat on their hands for too long. And fortunately, we have countries like Australia that have, in the last 12 years, have just done an enormous amount with that science and proving and, creating new ways of using their wool. And that has helped all of us. But that's what I feel, for me, that is the biggest thing that we with Strong Wool have to start doing now. It's all very well, we've got lots of people that produce all these gorgeous things, but if we can't get it out there and we can't get it in big numbers, we're not going to create a demand. And that's the only way we're going to get more money back into the grower, because at the moment everything's sold at auction and everyone's trying to buy it as cheaply as possible so that they can sell it as cheaply as possible to get the sales. My feeling is that we need to turn Strong Wool into a supreme product that people go in and expect to pay big prices. I don't know anyone that would go into a cashmere shop and expect to find something cheap. I want people to go in there and think, that's a wool carpet, I know I'm going to have to pay 3 times. It's going to end up that people like me aren't even going to be able to afford it. But to me, that's the only way that we're going to really create wealth back to the grower. So I've been told to shut up, so I will. Questions?
Well, thank you so much, Philippa. That was a wonderful presentation, and I think it really gives perspective to a very different industry than Canada's, but also one with a lot of similarities. And so it's really interesting to see how you're tackling some of the similar problems we face, but also, again, you have other advantages, certainly in terms of scale and geography that we don't have. So, but I know I can, of course, fill up the extra space, but I'm sure we have lots of questions flowing. So I don't know, Lydia, if we have any in the chat already, or if people want to put their hands up to ask a question, we will open up the floor.
Yeah, if anyone has questions, please either put them in the chat or raise your hand. There's one question so far. How are you responding to the likes of vegan wool? Wool produced from grass without sheep and the likes.
Vegan wool. Yeah. It's like, to me, that's just another opposition to the wool, the natural fiber. And we haven't really come across it here in this country yet, but that's where I think the storytelling of what we do, this younger generation keep talking about, we've got to get back to natural, we've got to get back to, they want to be vegans or whatever they want to be. But wool is caring for the country like no other fiber that I know. It's a natural fiber. It breathes, it kills all the VOCs in the air. It's doing really good stuff. So to me, it's just more of telling the story, and making people understand why they need wool and should have it, and it should be their first choice when they go in to buy a product. They should, I don't care what they buy, but if it's a pillow, if it's a blanket, if it's a bed, I want a wool mattress, thank you. I want, whatever.
Thanks for that. We have another question from Helen about quality assurance scheme. So if you could talk a little bit more about it.
It's a pity Ryan wasn't here. He had to leave. He just texted because he is actually running that. So we have to. I don't know. I don't know the technicalities of it. I have to have it in my company, which means we just have to ensure that we're audited by the government group, and they have audited our farm, and we just have to tick off all the boxes to ensure that it flows, and it's really a paper trail. But the farm, it's really basically for the farms themselves, that they treat their animals correctly, that they treat their people, that they're that they're not using chemicals that they shouldn't be, and so forth. It's just transparency, I think. But unfortunately, as I said, Ryan would have been able to give you the real deal on that.
Maybe we can send a link, and then we can share with the group afterwards.
Yeah, it's definitely online, all that sort of.
So can I just ask Philippa, sorry, that was my question. So is your quality assurance scheme, I thought that was specific to your company versus the New Zealand farm certification?
Oh, yes, I do have one. I did have one, but previous to the NZFAP coming along, I have got one, and all my clients, and there's a list of questions that they have to answer and have to commit to ensuring. But it's very similar to most quality assurances. It's all about animals and staff and well-being of everybody and everything. So I did that initially because I felt like it was just going too slow here. So I thought, well, I'll just do one myself. And then I educated our exporters that that was the case. And then when we did grouping of wools, I made sure that all those that were aligned with that were kept separate from anyone that wasn't. But again, it's actually really difficult not to find somebody. I mean, they have to be pretty bad not to tick the boxes, so to speak, here.
Okay, thank you.
Liz has her hand up. Liz, if you want to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hey, Philippa, I could listen to you talk about wool all day. Nice to see you again. My question is, I'm coming at it from an artist and designer point of view, and wool is very much material. And just the way you talk about your journey in wool as a material and your material understanding has been really inspiring to me. What do you think is the most important thing? Like you said, you want to impart that value to the consumer. And so I am between the wool producer as a master weaver. I'm between the wool producer and the consumer. What's the most important piece of that story that I should take with me?
Concerning wool.
Yeah, yeah. Because it's sustainable. Like to me, it's the
Yeah.
sustainability. And I mean, I've used it my
I,
whole life too.
often when I talk about it to groups, I take something with me,
Yeah.
like a blanket, and and I just go like this, and I just go, wool makes me feel secure. It protects me. It loves me. If you're upset, wool provides so much comfort. I try to say to them that it's the answer to so much, and it has been for centuries and centuries. I mean, I think it's the oldest industry in the world, and so I think the well-being to humans, I think, maybe. Does that make sense?
I can completely get with that. Yes. Thank you.
Thanks, a beautiful response, Philippa. We still have a couple of minutes if anyone else wants to ask their question, either in the chat or if you want to raise your hand.
I'll ask a question, but I can't figure out where my hand button is on this thing.
Glad there's someone else like that.
Jump right in.
Oh, Philippa, that was a great presentation, and you've been an idol of the Campaign for Wool Canada for long before we knew you. So it's a pleasure to listen to you. I had a couple of questions, but I don't know how to approach them really. How are you going to deal with more hair genetics in terms of educating your producers on not to let the hair sheep ram get out with the ladies? Do you have a strategy?
We're very frightened about that because our genetics has been our big advantage in the world. That's why we produce basically one type of wool. You go to the UK, they've got hundreds of different breeds, and it's very difficult to actually create significant lines of like for like. You know, so if you're going, you have to produce quantity of quality, and that's what we've always been able to do. And I was down in the store. I'm not often in the store now myself, but I went down there. There was a few off with COVID or whatever else we have these days. And I went in and I said, look, I'll sort the wool out for the next sale. And I had one of the young ones with me, and I went, oh my God, you poor kids. You've got so much more to deal with than what I had. You know, like I knew a good Romney lamb's wool, and I knew a good second shear bright white wool. Now they're coming in and it's just mixed. You can see the variation in genetics. So that is a concern to us. We are fortunate that we have a very high standard of shed workers so that they do understand separation. They understand how to separate wool. So basically we're still getting those types of wool separated in the shed after they've been shorn. But going back to your question, Jane, the genetics, to talk to the farmers, the only way we're going to change it is by increasing the value of the wool that they produce. They've just had enough. And so that's why the campaign and our wool impact are just so important, and what the work we do at IWTO.
Can I tag a second question on really quick? It's how, like, do you feel that your meat industry is working in concert with your wool industry, or is there like a bit of antagonism?
They're actually the ones funding wool impact. They have put, I think the government put in about 2 million, I think, and they equaled that. So that's significant for us. the wool industry hasn't got any money, so we couldn't put anything in. But yeah, no, the meat industry very much want the wool to succeed because they understand that they're a dual animal. You know, they can't just farm for meat and make enough. They've got to have the income from both. And the way markets go, they're up and down all the time. And what's traditionally kind of happened over the years is when meat goes down, wool goes up, and vice versa. So there's always been a very good working relationship between the two. But the wool has gone down over the last 8 years, and it's just not. I mean, we've lifted since COVID and since the scour is moving again, but it's not enough. It's still not enough to cover the cost of shearing. So you know, we've got some real work to do.
Thank you.
Just one other thing. This lipstick, by the way, ladies, is 100% wool. And I've got it on. I put it on. And our wool, Ron's Wool Research Organization have just created this powder that they're making. And this is one of the things. So, you know.
You have a link? Can we share a link?
It's Karen, Murrell.
Okay.
Karen Morell. Can you see the picture?
Cool.
It's gorgeous. I'll put it on for you.
It's blowing up the chat. People are very excited.
We should
Thank
have
you, Ella,
started
for
with the
posting the
lipstick.
link for people who want to get their own lipstick.
He gave it to me at the show I was at. I was at a country show on the weekend. He said, you know, I think you'll be a good advocate for this. And I said, well, I know where I'll talk about it.
You'll wake up tomorrow morning with a whole bunch of orders from Canada and think, what the hell?
Yeah.
What the hell?
It's actually really nice too.
But just before we wrap up, Candace was asking, I shared your link for your pillows. She was asking, do you ship to Canada?
Well, I'd love to. It's just the cost. And I have tried. I mean, you'd end up. I should try again because I do get I get a lot of queries from Australia, but I haven't. I'd have to. They're the best wool pearls or knops or whatever you like, because the Joma wool is the only one with the machine that does that that bounce. So I don't know, send me an email and I'll look into it, but I just think the freight is probably going to be the killer. I would need to be able to, I don't know how I'd do it, but because I did try to send some to my sister who lives in Australia, and I ended up paying more for freight than the pillows actually cost. So yeah, and freight with our end of the world has changed dramatically since COVID, so it's still, and then now with what's happening with the war, you know, it's not cheap.
Do you have any commercial or wholesale partners or retail partners that you sell to? I think Candace is angling to maybe represent you. She's popped her email in, so if you're looking for a distributor,
Okay.
do you have any right now?
Just send an email to me. No, I haven't. I mean, I have a few locally that sell it in their shops and so forth, but as I said, I haven't really got terribly serious, but I went, the reason I was down at the Wanaka AMP show, or the country show that we had, was to sell our pillows, and it was 2 days. And I only had about 25 pillows, but they were gone by lunchtime. So I packed up and had a lovely time at the show and enjoyed myself. But if I was really dedicated, I would have stayed there and sold them online and that. But I was too busy trying to catch up with old friends from way back.
Well, thank you so much. That was great.
Well, Candace, why don't I think we'll have Lydia connect you and Philippa, and then see if you can.
Okay, great.
A blooming retail relationship, perhaps.
Yeah. Well, that would be lovely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, I think I think we're just a little over, but not too bad. It's pretty much exactly an hour because we started a little bit later. So I just wanted to to thank you, Philippa, once again for taking the time to speak to our group. I forgot to mention at the beginning, of course, that this is our 10th anniversary of running the Campaign for Wool in Canada. I forgot to, when did you guys launch at the same time in 2010?
No, we're probably a wee bit ahead of you. We're by a couple of years, but we were part of the initial, when Prince Charles, or then Prince Charles, started it. Mm.
So we wrote, you had a 4-year lead on us. So, but that's great.
It took me 4 years to catch up, though, Matthew.
Yeah. Yes, well, and I have to say, I've always appreciated our conversations, particularly at the IWTO. I learned more in one of our little side chats during a coffee break than sort of a year's worth of wool research. So it's always very helpful, and we really appreciate the support, the informal and formal support that you provide to the Canadian industry. So I want to thank you again for taking your time. And Lydia, we have a preview for our next Spinning Yarn Speaker Series next month.
Yeah, apologies everyone, I don't have a visual to show you, but next month we're going to have someone closer to home, actually, from Montreal. Joe Bear and his colleague from Milo and Dexter. You would have also met them if you were at the WTO in Montreal. Yeah, talking about his experience building the wool supply chain in Canada as a small brand. So stay tuned for that. More information will be posted soon on our socials.
Wonderful. Well, I hope that everyone will be able to join us for that. So thank you again, Philippa, for speaking today. And thank you again for all of our participants. The Spinning Yarn Speaker Series was created at your request to learn more about the industry in Canada and around the world. And we hope you find it entertaining and engaging. Look forward to the next presentation. So have a great day, everyone, and enjoy your evening and enjoy your morning, Philippa.
Thank you very much, and it's been delightful. I hope you learned something.
Certainly. Have a great day, everybody.
All right.